right now, as Americans, we got to realize that the past two presidents have racked up a ton of debt, and I think as
100%.
Americans, we do need to all like push that issue a little bit more. I don't. I
Yeah,
think it's across the board, really.
that's where Elon comes in.
Yeah,
Dodge, right, Nick? What's Dodge
Yeah,
about?
yeah,
and it is
What's
20 million.
Dodge? 20 million.
yeah.
Nick, tell us what Dodge is.
Doge,
Doge,
Doge.
Doge,
Doge,
Doge, whatever.
I mean, isn't that so? I haven't looked up much on it, to be completely honest.
Department of
But is
Government
that's his
Efficiency.
department? Yeah, that's his Elon's new department.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So he's going to come in, clean house, hopefully make everything more efficient. Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy. I think that'll help with inflationary pressure to go down.
100%.
But at the same time, it's going to bring unemployment up because a lot of these jobs that Biden had brought in with his administration were government jobs. So that if they start cutting all these jobs, the unemployment rate is going to go up, which will affect the economy. The other thing that I do notice, like going back to Chris's point, both administrations and all the other administrations, for the most part, I think except like Bill Clinton, added debt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, that's true.
under Trump, he wants to do the tariffs, and it's more of a negotiation bargaining chip, I think. So it's not necessarily that he's going to put all these tariffs on everybody to such a high degree, but that will add inflation, and then tax cuts will provide a deficit, which is not good for mortgage rates. So that's one of the concerns. But considering his team and he's more business prone, I don't think it's going to be as bad as everybody thinks for mortgage rates for next year and the following years. Is my understanding.
Yeah, but I mean, he plans on cutting a lot of taxes, but then he plans on cutting even more government spending, right? And that goes
Which is
just full
good.
circle back to Elon. So,
Yeah, right.
so in turn, and also investing a lot in cryptocurrency. And I know, we haven't really talked much about crypto, but with more investment there, the wealth of that goes up, the country gets richer, and it goes full circle.
Crypto community is so happy with him because they definitely helped him win,
Yeah,
I think, to some degree, which is
yeah, those
interesting.
back channels.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
One aspect of these tariffs that just kind of worked out in his favor, I think, was just to bring it up, was in Mexico. He said he was going to throw a 25% tariff, I think, and he ended up negotiating already before he's in office with the Mexican
Hmm.
president lady, who
Hmm.
basically is, well, there's no real decision yet, but you can tell that they're both bluffing a little bit. But the fact that he brought her to the table to kind of stop the immigration, the illegal immigration, um, might be a good thing considering we've had an issue with Biden and Kamala. So
Right.
that's another negotiation tactic.
Yeah, no, it really is. But I mean,
So
all of that's great. But I mean, what I'm most excited about is RFK for sure. And
tell us
with
why.
Maha, make
Tell
America
us
healthy
why.
again. No, I mean, like I said, I'm most excited about RFK and what he's going to do. Because we needed the food industry in this country, the pharmaceutical industry in this country is complete garbage, and it's making everybody sick. It's poisoning everybody. I mean, product of that, and at the moment. So
Sucks.
could
Yeah,
definitely go off
all
on
of
that
us.
for quite some time. But I mean, the amount of just eh, additives and ingredients and pesticides and toxins that we're exposed to as Americans,
Hmm.
any majority of the other countries in the world aren't exposed to, right?
Right.
From things that are like glyphosate that are put on our crops and food, or things that are, animals like beef. Even if you get grass fed, pasture raised beef, if it's not from a good source, it could still definitely be,
Mm.
exposed to all these different antibiotics and toxins that you're exposed to. And then everything in the water, right? But I mean, even at the simplest form, if you look at a product that, say, I don't know, Kellogg's produces, right? And you
Right.
compare it to
Right.
that same product over in Europe or in Asia, it has half the ingredients and maybe even quarter of the ingredients
Mm.
that are in there, right? So
Hmm.
it's it's kind of crazy on all the research that's coming out now on how all of these things are affecting not only like our generation, but the generation after us and before us, right? That we were kind of
Right.
inherited, which they didn't know at that time, right? So we can't necessarily blame them, but the bigger corporations definitely knew that. The pharmaceutical companies knew the things that they were doing and putting in the food, putting in the water, that are leading to so many different autoimmune
Mm-hmm.
issues, ADHD, mental type of issues, right?
Inflammation.
Issues, chronic inflammation, which is, I
Yeah,
mean, the underlying cause of all disease, right? I
it's
mean, if you
crazy,
just look
dude.
at the word, yeah, if you look at the word dis-ease, it's dis-ease, right? Out of basically homeostasis, and all these things are endocrine disruptors that put us out of homeostasis. So I'm
Yeah.
just really excited on RFK coming in and cleaning house and actually giving it to these big, corporations that have kind of worked to brainwash us for profit, really. I mean, and you look at all the commercials and things that they pushed back, when our parents were growing up, or even when we were younger.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, this is
Tobacco,
good for you.
sugar.
Eat this and eat that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saturated fats, is it? I think they said was good for you at the time. Or what type of fat? Do you remember?
Well,
And
actually, it used to just be anti all fat. As
anti-fat. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now, I mean, you want to cure yourself, go on a carnivore-based diet, you know? And I mean, there's obviously nuances there,
Yeah, of
and you got to
Mhm.
course.
take it by case
Yeah,
basis.
you're not an
But
expert in that.
in
Neither am
general,
I. Right.
yeah. But I mean, in general, you want to clear up a lot of issues.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely a good place to start. So yeah, I mean, I just really hope that RFK comes in and does what he's saying he's going to, which I think he is going to, because he went against. I mean, his
Track
whole
record.
family's been Democrat, yeah, and
Right.
he went against that and is now a Republican, uh, spokesperson and candidate
Well,
and holding an
he was
office.
an attorney that beat lawsuit against that gardening chemical. I forgot the name, and he won for his client. I think it was. Starts
Yeah,
with
the
an M.
glyphosate. Yep,
Okay,
the spraying
but it's
glyphosate on the crops.
yeah.
Um, so I mean, hopefully, he could get in, and Trump already said he's gonna let him do what he wants to do. So hopefully
Mm-hmm.
that's still the case once January rolls around, and maybe within the next 6 to 9 months we could start to see a difference in the quality of our food, or at least policies and implemented changes that'll
Mm-hmm.
start to roll out.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one I think that right after the election, the first thing that I was excited about is the same thing that Nick just touched on. One of my first thoughts was how excited I was with what's going to happen with the food in America. Everybody
Hmm.
always talks about how much healthier food is in Europe, and obviously, when you go somewhere like Italy, the food
Right.
just, even though it could be high in carbs, it still just makes you feel good when you eat it. You don't
Yeah.
feel like it's a chore.
Heavy.
Like,
Yeah.
I can't remember the last time I had McDonald's, but I do know that after I ate it, I felt like what was going on inside of me was bad. Like, it just didn't feel good. It felt like
Yeah.
I needed to take a nap immediately. It wasn't promoting anything in my body other than, wow, that really tasted good. And
Yeah.
so American food has prioritized taste, bright colors in produce, high
Yep.
sugary foods.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I went keto the first time, I think it was like 2019, I realized that there was like one last piece of sugar that I was kind of hanging on to in my diet, and it was an apple. And I
Hmm.
remember I was driving home from work and I had this thought in my mind. I was like, man, I can't wait till I get home and get that apple. And then I realized I was an addict. Like, oh
Yeah.
my God, I'm addicted to sugar. That is like
Yes.
something someone would say about like a
Cocaine.
heroin
Yeah.
situation. I can't wait to get that hit. And I was so excited about getting that. And if you think about that, an apple is something that we view as Americans as like one of the most healthy things you can eat. And here I was fiending for one. And
Mhm.
I had cut out all the other stuff. I had cut out ingredients I couldn't pronounce. Um, and that's a pretty large list that you'll find in the grocery store. And I'd cut out so many things. And then there was that last thing that I was kind of holding on to. So that is what my initial reaction to the election was, I'm
Right.
actually, excited about the food,
Mm-hmm.
that to me.
Yeah.
And I also think that it's the thing that can actually be affected the easiest,
Right.
Right.
while the idea of Elon and Vivek going through and doing like an office space on the government, it sounds
It's a
cool in
stretch.
theory, but national defense, Social Security, VA benefits, Medicare. These are things that are going to be very difficult to even touch, and most people probably don't want a lot of that to be touched, especially when you talk about this Ponzi scheme that we call Social Security. But what are they really going to be able to affect? What are they really going to be able to touch? What percentage is that? I've heard that it's really low what they're really going to be able to get in there and do. And but I am interested to find out what that is. And I will say, at least I do trust Elon to be very pragmatic about it. I do think that RFK and Elon, the entire time that they're doing these things, they're going to be getting beaten up by the media.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's something that, you know, they're gonna have to, if they're gonna be successful, they're gonna have to tune
And
a
by
lot of
DC,
it out.
of course.
Yeah, and you think
Mhm.
I was just in DC 2 weeks ago, and you know, I was walking around, looking at all these buildings, looking at these industries, and like none of these people are happy that Elon is in town. That's their job security, so it makes
Yeah.
sense, you know. But as a nation, maybe it's time we need an audit.
Yeah.
Right, and I think Rand Paul had said it best, or Ron Paul, that once government passes something with spending, right, it's like impossible to get rid of it. There's no way you can get rid of it.
Mhm.
So I totally understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, if they do a good job clearing house and getting the right people to get out, maybe, just maybe, they might be able to retract things. But I don't think it's going to be in the next 4 years they're going to be able to do what everyone's hoping. It's going to take some time. But with the health situation, hopefully that does kick through, like you were saying, Chris and Nick. But do you think, Nick, or with all this stuff that we've already consumed in our bodies, are we already kind of damaged goods, or can we actually heal? What, I know
No,
you're not a
body
doctor, but like
doesn't.
you're pretty well read into this.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, you guys know I'm going through health journey
Right.
right now
That's
myself, right?
right.
But the body does have an amazing healing capability, right? I mean, that's how we've become such a great, you know, an abundant species, right? So no, all hope is not lost. But if things don't change soon, I mean, this is affecting, you know, kids that, you know, our generation who are having kids, generation before us and after us that are having kids, right? Where all of these type of autoimmune and mental issues like ADHD
Right.
and things like that, right, are becoming more and more, I guess, abundant, right, in kids in very young ages, like 2, 3, 4, 7 years old, right? And having to detox your kids in order for them to
Yeah.
start to actually mature as they should, right? And start to develop as they should.
But you know what I find interesting is these discussions that we're having about RFK, even Elon, and some of these other discussions where we're talking about this fight against, what we're really talking about is this fight against crony capitalism. And
Mhm.
if you look at a lot of these arguments, they're very reminiscent of Bush era Democrat talking points.
Yeah.
And what's very interesting is the Democrat establishment is terrified that these might come into play. And I find that the most unique thing, if you look at his cabinet, is how many of them 4 years ago, including him, by the way. Well, him, it's more like 15 years ago, 16 years ago, but are actually like former Democrats. And it kind of
Yeah.
makes you wonder what just happened, because it is a little, it's not really as black and white as it's been portrayed. There's
No.
definitely
And I
been a
mean,
change that's occurred.
yeah, political ideologies have definitely shifted. And I mean, more so over the past couple of years than probably
Yeah.
ever before, but definitely since, like you said, since Trump was more democratic, you know,
Mhm.
15, 16 years ago, 100%.
And that was the concern by a lot of Republicans whenever he was running, was like, hey, this is actually a Democrat running.
Yeah.
You know, that was kind of the comment they made about
Hmm.
him. And obviously, it's really hard to say, because you look at, like, for example, the border was like a bipartisan issue for like a very long
Right.
time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then until he said that, then it became like black and white. You either want an open border or you don't. You
Right.
know what I mean? And it was weird how that all played out, but I think it's hard to rectify as an American, because you're like, wait a minute, how did this all just change? How did these perspectives change overnight? I feel like that has happened in the past
Hmm.
10 years. so many perspectives, you've been kind of pushed into a camp, you know, and you have to
Right.
accept it.
Yeah.
Or
I mean,
For
hey,
sure.
Angela, tell you, I'm right. I'm
yeah,
right there. Right. I
yeah,
I
mean,
think a
you
lot
know,
of what might have changed your opinion, Nick, was RFK, and I think a lot of people changed on
yeah.
that
I mean, it
decision.
wasn't just RFK though. I mean, I mean, between the two choices, and
Yeah.
you know, if you look at okay, what's happened over the past 4 years. I mean, I've had a couple of conversations with my girlfriend about this, and because she's also
Yay.
perspective.
Nice. Uh-huh.
um,
Sorry, go on.
no, you're good. But yeah, I mean, we've had a number of conversations where, you know, we both were, you know, more on the Democratic side of things. And then now, just because of how everything has happened over the past, you know, 4 years, that it just kind of makes more sense, you know, because of how drastically everything has changed and party lines have changed.
Right. And I think that's why things are more balanced ideology wise in America than most of us thought, I think.
Yeah.
not anymore, not anymore. Not on a
What do you
federal
mean by
level.
that?
On a federal level, as of November 5th, they are not more balanced. I mean,
Oh,
I think that it's
yeah.
if you look at who like what's the saving grace for Democrats. I really feel like this is an opportunity that unfortunately won't be taken advantage of. It would do America a lot of good right now if there was this introspective view. But unfortunately, I've been watching like a lot of like street interviews across the country on YouTube of, you know, the aftermath, talking to people
Oh,
that
yeah.
voted one way or the other. And I don't. It's so black. Like people. There's two different ways of thinking in this country, and it really causes me pause because I'm like, what if I'm wrong about everything? Because they are clearly wrong about everything. You know.
I think
So
you're right, though. Because,
I'm like,
Yeah.
so maybe I'm completely wrong here. So I check myself, and
mm-hmm.
I'm like, but you know, then I think the thing that really gets me is when someone tells me something that's like blatantly not true, and I think to myself like, oh, you just haven't looked into it. You know, like you've literally just listened to one of these major news networks and said, this is how it is, and then you haven't dug any deeper and really thought about it. You know, and so it's difficult out here. I remember I was having a conversation with someone close to me and my family um, a month ago, and I'm very careful to make sure that I'm using like I really want to make sure that I'm not saying anything that's not true. And
Yeah.
you know, there was the whole discussion. It was a political football of was she the borders are, was she not? And so I was very careful to say exactly what the Biden executive order was, which was to look at the root causes. When I was talking to someone in my family who's clearly 100% all in Democrat,
Hmm.
um, and I was talking to them, and I said, you know, whenever she was tasked with solving the root cause issues on the border, and I was kind of, and I pointed out how there didn't seem like there was a lot of effort there, and they corrected me, and they were like, no, 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 it's this such a lie that keeps being said that she's the borders are, and I'm just thinking to myself, I'm just talking about the Biden executive order where he does spell out she is tasked with solving the root
Right.
cause crisis of migration in the country. That's an
Mm.
objective fact. And so at that moment, I realized in that conversation that I care about my family member a lot. And I'm not even going to counter with, hey, that's the executive order that he signed. I'm not even going to do any of that. I'm
Mm.
now going to concede the conversation and allow them to continue this world that they want to live in. That's fine with me,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
you
There
know?
was to add to that point, I think one of the reasons why they also lost too was Brian Williams, I think NBC retired anchor. He was saying some talk show or something after the
Mm.
election that they continued to want to move the goalposts of culture, like the shift of culture, like the focus and emphasis was culture only, which is good in a way, like culture to focus on culture. But when it came to like inflation, crime, the border, they were like basically saying, no, that doesn't exist. Stop talking about it. That's everything's fine. Focus on
Mm.
this over here. But since 2021, I think the Commerce Department had mentioned that inflation's up about 30%, either 20 or 30% since 2021. But that percentage does not reflect into CPI the way it should be. It like CPI
Mm.
should be a lot higher. And people that are, whether they're Democrat or Republican, they're like, I need to focus on getting groceries. I don't care about what you're saying about this
Yeah.
culture
Yeah.
or whatever. I want to focus on being able to feed my family, and that's why
Right.
that landslide happened, like Chris had said. Even though I think everyone's more balanced, but we clearly saw everyone vote for Trump. A lot of people.
Right.
Yeah, and I
So
think you can learn a lot by watching. I think I've watched every media network, like a timeline, a supercut of their reaction to election night as it progressed.
Mhm.
CBS to me was the most telling because you realized you were watching, like, on CBS was more prominent than any other network, in my opinion.
Mm.
Well, I guess MSNBC if you're not counting them, but CBS was just, you can tell that they were they were advocating and for a result, and then as it went on, they were trying to explain, oh my God, this disastrous thing just happened in the country, like, and it was
Yeah.
just very clear, like, okay, you guys aren't even hiding the fact that you wanted a certain side to win. It's not even like a question anymore, and I think that has blinded a lot of the coverage. And if the coverage is blinded, that means, like, people watching it, they're going to see that, they're going to notice that there's someone cheerleading, and they're going to be turned off from that.
Yeah.
And the I think the worst thing is when I think no American on the left or the right is turned on by finger wagging, and that happened. This
Mhm.
happened a lot leading up to the election. This finger wagging and that era, that arrogance in the air, very similar to 2016, like really similar to that
Yeah.
same vibe where you're being lectured to. Um, yeah, I think that again, there's not going to probably be a lot of soul searching, but I think everybody could soul search at this moment in time. In
Right.
fact, Republicans should soul search right now, and really push for some of these things that they wanted to happen. Uh, don't just, be happy that your team won. And, like, now's the time to really be holding your elected leaders to account.
Hmm.
And, like, just don't now be quiet about it and just, haha, my team won. That's a
Yeah.
really silly way to be governed, is that way.
Yeah. But I think you made a good point, Andrew. I mean, you're definitely right, Chris, 100% that they were just kind of showing that they picked a side and that was it.
Mhm.
But you made a good point, Andrew, where I think Americans are just tired of the price of everything and just, you know, going into debt and not being able to afford things that they should be able to afford.
talk about credit card debt.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things I know we wanted to touch on was the increase in credit card debt, right? Which was, let me pull that up. It had increased now to hit a record high of $1.17 trillion,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
is crazy.
It was 900 billion in 2020, I believe.
And yes, exactly.
About.
Right. So I mean that's a substantial increase, and I mean I really think that's. I mean I don't think. I mean everybody would agree that that's because of inflation and people not being able to afford what they used to be able to afford to live the quality of life that they want to live, right? Or should be able to
Mm-hmm.
live,
Mm-hmm.
or were living before, right? Because
Yeah.
wages have not followed that.
And this reflects in life. I think I saw on Wealth Instagram, 1 of 4 individuals will be single for the rest of their life, which sucks, right?
Yeah.
Because now it gives them the less chance or probability of being successful to some degree. That's subjective and
Hmm.
financially. The median age of a home buyer now is for a first time home buyer is 38. I remember when it used to be like 28 or 33. Now it's
Yeah.
38. You're almost 40 as a first time home buyer.
Yeah.
A repeat buyer is 61 years old. An average home buyer, when you average it all out, it's 56. That's not obviously good, and it's probably going to
No.
keep going down that
Crazy.
route. Yeah,
Right.
it's insane. And I think, unfortunately, in a way, home prices will probably still continue to go up, at least even very minimal, but still, it's expensive. And that's a big issue that is just going to continue to be rampant, more than likely,
Mhm.
unless, DOGE and all that, or DOGE, whatever you said, Chris, ends up working
Right.
out better and they bring the rates down. But when rates come down, people want to buy. So who knows what's
Yeah.
going to happen.